So, I did something crazy last week. I decided to live an entire day completely only in English. No switching back to my native language, not even once.
Wait, you actually did that? For how long?
From the moment I woke up until I went to bed. And honestly, Jake, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done.
I believe it. I tried something similar, and I remember feeling so frustrated. Like I had so much I wanted to say, but I couldn't find the words?
Exactly. And that frustration, that's what so many English learners feel every single day. You understand English when you listen to podcasts or watch videos, but when you need to actually speak it in real life, suddenly your mind goes blank.
Your brain just freezes. It's like you know the words somewhere in there, but you can't access them when you need them most.
Right? And the worst part is that feeling of embarrassment. You're standing there, struggling, and the other person is waiting for you to finish your sentence, and you just want to disappear.
That pressure makes everything worse. You start thinking too much about grammar, about whether you're saying it correctly, and then you mess up even more.
This happens to 99% of English learners, and nobody talks about it. They tell you to study harder, memorize more words, do more grammar exercises, but nobody tells you the real secret.
Which is what?
Well, that's exactly why we're here today. Welcome to English Progress Hub, where we help you break through your English learning plateau and finally speak with confidence. I'm Anna, and this is my co host, Jake.
Hey everyone, we're so excited you're here because today we're going to share something that changed everything for us and for hundreds of our listeners.
And we're going to give you 5 concrete, actionable tips that you can start using today to transform the way you learn and speak English.
But honestly, tip number 5, it's the one that's going to blow your mind.
Make sure you listen all the way until the very end, because tip number 5 is the exact opposite of what your teachers told you in school, and it literally changes everything about how you approach English learning. Trust me on this one. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
Okay, so before we get into the tips, I want to paint a picture for you. Imagine you're trying to grow a garden, right?
A garden. I like this already.
You buy all the most expensive seeds, the best soil, the most beautiful pots. You do everything perfectly on day one, but then you never go back to water it.
Oh no, the plants die.
Exactly. They die because consistency matters more than perfection, and language learning is exactly the same way. Most people study English like crazy for 2 weeks, then they stop for 3 weeks, and then they start all over again.
And their English garden just dies.
Completely. But the people who make real progress, they show up every single day, even if it's just for a few minutes. They water that garden consistently, and over time, it grows like crazy.
That's such a powerful way to think about it, because we often think that learning English is about having one big moment, one big study session where everything clicks.
But it's not. It's about tiny, consistent actions, day after day, week after week. That's how real change happens.
And here's the biggest myth I see, Jake. People think they need to wait until they're ready to speak English.
What do you mean?
They say things like, I'll start speaking English when I know more vocabulary, or I'll join conversation groups when my grammar is better. But that's backwards.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You actually learn by doing, not by waiting.
Exactly. Speaking English is not something you do after you've studied enough. Speaking English is part of the study. It's the most important part.
So the mindset shift is you don't prepare to speak English. You prepare by speaking English.
Yes, and that single shift changes everything. So, how do we actually fix this? How do we start speaking English every day, even when we're scared, even when we don't feel ready?
Well, it starts with a small, manageable change in your daily routine. And that's what these 5 tips are all about.
Tip number one is where everything begins. Okay, tip number one is this. Start by narrating your immediate environment out loud in English. Every single thing you see, touch, or do.
Okay, so this morning I woke up and I said out loud, I'm waking up. I'm stretching my arms. The sun is coming through the window. It's a beautiful day. Just describing what's happening as it happens.
That sounds simple, but actually, I think that's genius because you're not trying to have a complicated conversation. You're not putting pressure on yourself. Right. And here's why this works. Your brain creates connections between the English words and real actions in your life. You're not just memorizing words from a textbook. You're using them in context, in real time.
So when you say, I'm pouring coffee, your brain links the phrase pouring coffee to the actual action, the smell, the feeling of the warmth in your hands.
Exactly. And I remember doing this. And honestly, it felt really weird at first. I was standing in my kitchen, narrating everything like I was a sports commentator.
Did anyone hear you?
Yes, my roommate came in and she just stared at me. She thought I was crazy. I felt so embarrassed. I wanted to stop immediately.
What did you do?
I didn't stop. I told her what I was doing, and you know what? She thought it was cool. And then she joined me. We were both narrating things in English, laughing at how weird we sounded, but we were actually practicing.
That's amazing.
And after about 3 weeks of doing this, every single day, something incredible happened. I was at a grocery store, and a customer next to me asked me a question in English. Before, I would have panicked and frozen, but this time I answered her naturally, without thinking. The words just came out.
Because you'd practiced them in context so many times.
So many times. That's the power of tip number one. You're not studying English, you're living it. You're making it part of your daily life, not something separate.
And it builds your confidence without the pressure of a formal conversation.
That's so true. But actually, tip number two is even more important because if you do tip one without tip two, you'll keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again, and you won't even know you're doing it.
Oh no. So what's tip number 2?
Tip number two, record yourself speaking in English and then listen back to it the next day.
Okay, but that sounds awkward. Why would I want to hear myself?
Because you're terrible at judging your own accent and mistakes in the moment. Your brain fills in the blanks. You think you sound fine, but you're not actually listening to what you're really saying.
That makes sense. So by recording and listening back,
You become your own English teacher. You hear your real pronunciation, your real problems, and you can actually fix them.
and you don't have to embarrass yourself in front of another person.
You can be honest with yourself in private. There's no judgment, no pressure. And here's something personal. I was terrified to do this at first because I thought my English was so bad and I didn't want to hear proof of it.
But you did it anyway?
I did, and I recorded myself telling a simple story about my day, just 2 minutes, nothing fancy. When I listened back the next morning, I was shocked, not because it was bad, but because it was better than I thought. I had a few pronunciation issues, sure, but the overall flow was much smoother than I expected.
That must have felt good.
It did, but then I started noticing things, like I was saying and way too much. I was rushing through certain words, and I was repeating the same phrase over and over instead of varying my vocabulary.
And now that you knew the problem,
I could actually fix it. The next week, I recorded myself again and I focused on speaking more slowly, removing those fillers. And when I listened back, the difference was incredible. I felt so proud.
So the magic is in repetition, awareness, and improvement, all within your own control.
And the psychological benefit is huge too. You build a relationship with your own progress. You can hear yourself getting better week after week, which keeps you motivated.
This is so smart. But wait, there's a catch, right? Because tip number 3 is the thing that really ties everything together.
Yes, tip number 3 is what actually accelerates all of this.
Tip number 3, find someone to speak English with, even if it's just for 5 minutes a week. A native speaker, a language partner, anyone.
And I know what everyone is thinking right now. Jake, I'm not ready. I'm too embarrassed. My English is too bad.
I hear you. But here's the thing. You will never feel ready. You just have to do it anyway.
And when you do it, something magical happens because a real person gives you real feedback and they respond to what you say in ways that a language app or a textbook just cannot.
They might correct you naturally. They might ask you follow-up questions. They might share something about themselves. And suddenly, you're having a real conversation, not a practice session.
I remember doing this, and I was so nervous. I joined an online conversation group, and I was supposed to speak for just 5 minutes with a native English speaker from the United States.
How did it go?
Badly at first. I was stuttering, I was nervous, I was thinking way too much about grammar, and I made several mistakes. The speaker corrected me, but in a kind way, and we kept going.
And then?
And then something shifted. After about 2 minutes, I stopped thinking so hard and just started speaking. We talked about our favorite books, about our cities, about travel, and by the end of those 5 minutes, I didn't want it to end.
That's the moment when you realize speaking English is actually fun.
Yes, and here's the crazy part. That one 5-minute conversation did more for my English than months of studying alone. because I was forced to think on my feet, to use real vocabulary, to be creative with my language.
And you learned that mistakes aren't the end of the world.
They really aren't. In fact, the people who correct you are helping you improve. They're not judging you, they're on your team.
So the lesson is, real conversation with a real person beats anything else.
Absolutely. But here's what a lot of people miss. If you do all three of these tips, but you don't do tip number 4, you're going to burn out. You're going to get frustrated.
Oh no. So what's tip number 4?
Tip number 4 is more about your identity. You need to see yourself as someone who speaks English, not as someone learning English.
That's a big shift. What does that actually look like?
It means you change your self-talk. Instead of saying, I'm trying to learn English, you say, I'm a person who speaks English. I'm getting better every day.
It's like you're shifting from being a student to being a speaker.
Exactly. And this has a real psychological effect because our brains believe the stories we tell ourselves. And if you keep telling yourself, I'm bad at English, your brain will keep you in that state.
But if you tell yourself, I'm an English speaker, your brain will start working to make that true.
Yes, and it sounds simple, but it's so powerful. I started doing this, and it changed everything about how I presented myself. I joined an English book club. I started replying to social media comments in English. You made it part of your identity. Totally. And at first, it felt like I was pretending. Like, who am I to call myself an English speaker when I'm still learning?
That's the moment of discomfort, though.
Right. And I remember being in that book club, and we were discussing a novel, and I realized I had actually understood most of it. And when I shared my opinion in English, people listened. They thought my perspective was interesting.
Did anyone correct you or make you feel bad?
No, everyone was just respectful and supportive, and I realized something huge in that moment. People care about what you're saying, not about your accent or your grammar mistakes. They care about your thoughts, your ideas, your personality.
That changes everything.
It really does. And from that moment on, I stopped apologizing for my English. I stopped saying, sorry, my English is not perfect. I just showed up as myself, as an English speaker, mistakes and all.
And people responded to that confidence.
They did, and my English actually improved faster because I was no longer afraid. I was taking risks, trying new vocabulary, having longer conversations.
So the identity shift is huge, but there's one more tip, and honestly, Anna, this one is the game changer.
Tip number 5 is the one we teased at the beginning, and it's going to completely change how you think about learning.
Tip number 5, stop trying to be perfect. Seriously, stop it.
This is the opposite of what most teachers tell you, right? Teachers always say, study hard, get every answer right, perfect your grammar, improve your pronunciation.
And all of that has its place, but it also creates massive pressure and shame because you're always chasing this impossible ideal of perfection.
And when you inevitably make a mistake, you feel like a failure.
Exactly. And then you get so discouraged that you give up, or you go back to studying in isolation, because at least you can control your mistakes there.
But here's the truth that nobody tells you. The people who become fluent in English are not the perfectionists. They're the people who are willing to be imperfect.
They just show up and do it.
Right. They speak, they make mistakes, they learn, they move on. No drama, no shame, no giving up.
And they celebrate the small wins instead of focusing on the big failures.
I was a huge perfectionist, Jake. I still am, honestly. And that perfectionism held me back for years. I would write essays in English, and if they weren't perfect, I would delete them and start over.
That sounds exhausting.
It was so exhausting. I remember spending 3 hours writing a single email in English because I wanted every word to be perfect. And you know what happened?
What?
Nothing bad happened. People liked it. They commented supportively, and I realized that imperfect English is still English, and imperfect action is still progress.
That's beautiful, actually.
And from that moment on, I started celebrating the small wins. I spoke for a full minute without stopping. Victory. I understood a whole paragraph in an English article. Victory. I tried a new phrase and used it correctly. Victory.
And that's what kept you motivated.
So much more motivated than I ever was when I was chasing perfection because I had wins to celebrate all the time. I wasn't waiting for that magical moment when my English would be perfect enough.
Because that moment never comes.
It doesn't. There's always room to improve, and that's okay. That's actually beautiful. It means there's always something new to learn, always another level to reach.
And the people who get there are the ones who celebrate every step along the way.
Exactly.
Okay, so we used some really important words today, and I know some of them might have been a little advanced for some listeners. So, Anna, let's break them down really quickly so nobody misses anything.
Great idea, Jake. Let's do this.
Okay, first word, plateau.
A plateau is a level where you're not improving anymore.
For example, I felt stuck on a plateau for 3 months before I finally tried speaking with a language partner.
Next word, consistency.
Consistency means doing something regularly, again and again, the same way each time.
For example, the consistency of practicing every day was more important than studying for 10 hours on one day.
Next word, accelerate.
Accelerate means to make something go faster or happen sooner.
For example, using a language partner accelerated my English progress much more than I expected.
Next word, psychological.
Psychological means relating to the mind and how people think and feel.
For example, the psychological benefit of celebrating small wins was just as important as the actual language improvement.
Next word, fluent.
Fluent means able to speak a language smoothly and naturally without stopping to think about grammar.
For example, after 2 years of consistent practice, she became fluent in English and could have natural conversations with native speakers.
And finally, identity.
Identity means who you are, the way you see yourself, and the way other people see you.
For example, when I started seeing myself as an English speaker, my confidence grew and my identity changed completely.
Perfect. All set.
So, here's the thing we promised you at the beginning of this episode. We said we'd give you a secret that changes everything. And that secret is this: you don't have to be perfect to start speaking English. You just have to be willing to be imperfect.
You have to show up, even when you're scared. even when you don't feel ready.
And when you do that, when you actually do that, everything changes. Your confidence grows, your English improves faster, and you start to see yourself as someone who speaks English, not someone who's struggling to learn it.
That's the real transformation.
So let's do a really quick recap of our 5 tips because they build on each other.
Tip number 1. Narrate your immediate environment out loud in English every single day.
Tip number 2, record yourself and listen back so you can hear your real progress and your real problems.
Tip number 3. Speak to a language partner or native speaker for at least 5 minutes, even if you're nervous.
Tip number 4, change your identity. See yourself as someone who speaks English, not as a learner.
And tip number 5. Stop chasing perfection and start celebrating the small wins.
Because those small wins are what keep you going.
You don't need to be perfect. Your progress is what matters, and you are making progress right now, in this moment, because you've heard these tips and you're going to try them.
That's progress.
That's already progress.
Here's the question we want you to answer in the comments. Which of these 5 tips are you going to try first? Are you going to narrate your environment? Are you going to record yourself? Are you going to find a language partner? Tell us in the comments because we want to celebrate your first steps with you.
We seriously do. We read every comment and we love hearing about your progress.
Thank you so much for being here with us today. We can't wait to hear what happens when you try these tips.
Until next time, keep making progress. You're doing great.
You really are. Thank you for listening to English Progress Hub.